I feel like the globe is a squeeze box right now, and we're all just going, wee wah, wee wah.
It was you who kept me going.
Right on the other side of everything you're afraid of is everything that you're hoping to get to.
I'm, fabulous. I'm fabulous.
I tapped into the creative child that I once was, and that's really how I got my life back.
I can have my grief, but my grief doesn't have to have me.
And then maybe you'll realize I'm badass.
I am magic, I am magic, I am magic.
I love coming and talking to you and laughing with you because that's what it's all about too, right?
It really is. When we open up to each other and we look at each other and go, wow, we really aren't that different, it does. It opens up a whole new world. I'm a believer that the art of having a conversation has been lost. So I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to start looking people in the eye and having a conversation with them. Sometimes I forget I have a house that I can go to sleep in, and I'm like, but I don't want to leave the tent. Hey everybody, welcome to Tent Chat. I'm Maureen, and tonight I'm sitting here with my guest, Lucie Dickenson, who is the author of The Anxious Hippie. And also you have the workbook that goes along with The Anxious Hippie.
Right, the companion workbook.
The companion handbook, yes. And I want to tell you that I have both. And first of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Talking to me in my little experiments.
Beautiful tent, right? Amazing tent.
Thank you so much. It's my happy place. But I wanted to talk to you. I did want to talk to you about the book.
Okay.
But before we get to the book, I really, my whole concept here is trying to reach people so that they know that they're not alone, and a lot of the things that we deal with on an individual basis that make us feel alone and isolated are things that everybody else deals with, but we just don't talk about. So you are kind of like me, and I love that because we both just spill it out there. We both just go, yeah, this is me. This is my whole messy life. My mess is my message. And so I'm gonna zip it, and I'm gonna kind of I just want everybody to learn about Lucie because we love Lucie.
Thank you. Well, I love what you said there because I do believe we are so much more alike than we are different.
Yes.
It's just in the details. We're all struggling. We're all dealing with something. And the more we talk about that, the more that we're going to help one another.
Yes.
So that's my belief in that. About me, what do you want to know?
Well, your book really is kind of about the highs and lows. I call you my anxiety guru,
right? Because
of that book. And so many of your funny stories. I love the way you tell your stories because they're not like traditional chapters. It's like literally jumping into the mind of Lucie. And I love that.
They're short, beat chapters. And I wrote it that way. I don't know if we're just segueing into the book right now, but I wrote it that way because when I was, suffering terribly with anxiety and I was having panic attacks, 10, 20 a day, I would go to, the bookstore and get these books, and they were really clinical.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the mindset to read that at that point. Later on I could, when I got better, but at that point I needed something short and quick. That would give me information, that would make me laugh,
yes,
that would make me forget where I was at that moment, which was panic, but would also give me information and help me. And that's why I wrote the book, because there was nothing like that. And I needed that. So I know if I needed that, there would be at least one other person that needed that.
I agree, because I know, so I don't really talk about my background, or I haven't yet, but I come from a background of incest, pedophilia, sexual abuse, rape, and domestic violence by 5 different men. So I always say that I was raised in chaos. I didn't know for the longest time how to exist unless I was existing in chaos.
It was your normal. It was your baseline.
If someone else's life was in chaos, I was the person to call because I could kind of pull it all together, rein everybody in, and be like, I got this.
Right.
I know this better than anybody. But along with that chaos comes so much anxiety, because once the chaos ends, you're lost.
Right.
And when things start happening and you don't know how to react to them, you're hit with anxiety and depression. So I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about how you recognized your anxiety, how you started to work through it, and then how you really kind of came to be this person that, you know, that not only talks about it openly, but really like gives people the tools that they need to help them deal with those anxious moments.
Right. And at no time, you know, in our talk do I want to say that I don't get anxiety. I don't float around your tent, right, like a guru off the ground, because
we're just floating.
That's impossible.
Yes.
And I think that's what I was looking for at one point. You know, the word heal is so funny because it makes you think that you're done, you're finished, you wash your hands of it. And I would get so upset and go back into a panic every time I would take a couple steps, but it wasn't completely gone, right? And I just had to realize, you know, just like someone has a broken leg and they might have a limp for a long time or maybe forever, for their whole life. That was me, and there will be certain things that trigger me. But I'm okay saying that and still being an anxiety expert, because we are all, you know, we're all on this continuum of healing and helping one another, right?
Yes.
And we're give and take, and we help and we love. And I think I would be amiss to be on this, you know, talk to you and say that, you know, I'm, you know, fabulous. I mean, I'm fabulous.
She is fabulous.
But I'm not, you know, like I said, floating around, you know, waving my magic wand at everybody and saying, get well. But what I am able to do is pull out a toolbox, a fabulous toolbox that I collected over the years, and I know how to get out of it really easily. And that, to me now, I know is healed. And that's what's great. And so that's what I could give.
I really want you to share some of your tools. I love the school bus.
The school bus.
I love the school bus because I'm kind of like a visual person. So when you're talking to me, sometimes when people are talking to me, I look like I'm not paying attention, but what they don't realize is the story that they're telling me. I'm so engrossed in visualizing it that sometimes I look like I've checked out, and it's the complete opposite.
It's because like, you're really taking it in.
I'm so into what you're telling me that like I'm looking at everything in color. So when you describe the school bus technique, I actually put myself in there and I'm like,
it works.
This is so simple.
And so many of the tools in the toolbox, and I'll tell you about the school bus, are simple. But you have to use them. You have to do it. You have to do that work. Even if it's simple, you have to do it. And sometimes I think maybe, at least in my case, and people that I talk to, thought it had to be hard. And it doesn't have to be hard. You just have to do the work, the simple steps to get there, right?
My favorite word, willing. You just have to be willing.
You have to be willing.
That's it.
Right? You have to be willing to do that work. So the school bus is a really easy technique. And it
makes me smile.
It makes you smile. So if you can just imagine that you're on a bus and you're the bus driver and you're driving to your dreams and goals, whatever they are, along the way, you have to stop for passengers because you're a bus driver, right? Of course.
Of course. Well, maybe not me. I might just be like, yeah, no, I gotta go. Right? I gotta go. You gotta take the next bus.
So as you get, you know, as you stop at these stops, people can get off, but anxiety can get on. And when anxiety gets on the bus, you don't let them take the wheel. You don't let any passengers take the wheel of your bus. You're still in charge going to your goals and dreams. When anxiety gets on, you tell them, sit down, be quiet. I'll take you where you want to go. You can get on or off wherever you want, but I'm going to where I want. And when you're in charge and you're you're the driver of the bus and anxiety's just in the back seat, you realize that's not what's in charge. You're in charge of your life and your destiny. Anxiety can be there or not be there, and that's okay. That's okay. Accept yourself as the person in charge.
I love that. Like, you have no idea how much I visualize that.
You see it.
Like, I am Ralph Cramden from The Honeymooners. I am sitting with that big wheel.
I see it, the big wheel,
and
right?
I'm just like, get off the bus.
But it's those little things, and the fact that you visualize it means it would work for you because you can see that, and visualization is such a strong tool for anxiety because anxiety is in your mind.
Yes.
So if you're taking another visual and put it in there instead, you're kind of replacing that old tape, that old recording of anxiety, right? Those old pathways, and you're replacing it with something new.
Absolutely.
So those visualizations work fabulous for anxiety.
Do you find that people with anxiety maybe become a little, what's the word I'm looking for? See, this is when I should script it, folks. Do you find that they become discouraged if they can't, did you become discouraged before you really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why my book is 200 something pages, because there were so many times I tried and became discouraged and didn't make those connections. And it was when I learned, like you did, that when there is trauma or when there is an issue or a problem, because sometimes people don't, call that a trauma, your body takes in all 5 senses. So everything you see, feel, hear, think, touch, at that moment is encapsulated as also part of the trauma, right? So what you did is you created a new anchor for yourself. And that's why I also, along with the anxiety, and I'm going back to your original question about being discouraged, is that's why when I had the anxiety, I also had chemical sensitivities, because I was in a laundry room at one time when things happened. That's why I had food sensitivities, because when, I would hear certain things and I was eating certain food, my brain encapsulated it all. And those were my triggers, were chemicals and, what I smelled, what I saw, what I tasted. And that's why I had those problems. So I was really discouraged, because when I heard other people talk about anxiety, it was like, oh, I had a panic attack. And I'm not belittling it. Their panic attack was huge to them. But I was, 98 pounds wet, in my bed, not able to leave a room because every chemical made me feel like I was going to die. And I was like, how come my anxieties to the umpteenth degree? I don't understand it. And it was when I understood how trauma worked and how those 5 senses were actually trying to protect me. And when I saw it as a protection and a beautiful signal from my body to help me, and I changed the narrative, and created another anchor, is when I was healing.
So do you agree that most people's anxiety is caused by something that's happened in their life? Or do you think that it's possible, for people who've had a seemingly easy life to be the type of people that someone would look at and go, what do you have to be anxious about? Like, do you think that most people in some part of their history is how the anxiety comes to the surface? Or do you think that it could just be one moment when something just doesn't click right?
I think what you last said there, it's one moment when something doesn't click right, but it's not necessarily just trauma. For me, that was a lot of it. So that's all I knew. That was my point of reference. So that's what I thought for the longest time was it. But the more I worked with people, had clients, read about it, learned, knowledge, and grew, I realized we're all so unique. So I think it's trauma. Sometimes it's nutritional deficiencies, right?
Really?
That create, so the gut-brain axis goes both ways. So if your brain, if you're all panicky, it can affect your gut, but sometimes your gut can affect your brain. So it goes that way as well. I completely believe in generational issues that are passed down from generation to generation. So sometimes, and some of the stuff wasn't my stuff. And I'm like, really? I have to handle your stuff too?
Right.
But it felt great to break it, for my family. And so I also believe sometimes some people are just born with some anxiety, some neural problem in their brain. So there are various reasons for it, but I do think the bulk of people, especially in the stressful world we live in today, and with everything that's going on now, it just shows how it's from trauma and from that one moment in time, because it's risen rapidly over, 2020.
I know this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like the globe is a squeeze box right now. We're all just going, wee, wah, wee, wah. And it's just kind of like, we need to stop, people. Like, we need to kind of stop and get off. I want some more tools. Quickly, give us a few more tools. I know that I'm completely catching you off guard.
It's okay.
Everybody's like, Maureen, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, don't worry about it. We're just going to wing it.
So I have a couple. I have the superhero. I love the superhero. Do you know about that one?
I do, but not everybody else does.
So the superhero is really great, and it sounds like it's for kids, but I'm going to confess it was probably one of the things I used the most, because I told you I had the chemical sensitivities and the food sensitivity, so it really worked for me. You just imagine your favorite superhero, and you pretend you're putting, again, a visual, right? A visualization, because those are so great for people with anxiety. And you put on your favorite superhero's suit. And mine is Wonder Woman.
Ooh.
Because I liked her.
I was going to say.
Yeah. I like those bracelets.
I like her invisible plane.
Exactly. The rope, right? Like all of that. So, you know, you imagine putting it on, and as you have it on, you have a shield on you, like we were just talking about, a boundary, right? Those boundaries. And you don't let anything, the noise that we're listening to, the news that you're listening to, negative people, negative family members, whatever it is that's toxic around you, and that could be thoughts, you know, it could be whatever, you are literally a superhero fending that off. And that's how superhero suit works. And it works perfectly. And it's great for kids, but you know, try it adults. It works for you too.
I think I'm my own little superhero because I imagine that I'm like a modern day version of Stevie Nicks, who's just kind of like going through the fairy tale forest and just kind of twirling around in her big
big skirts,
now
right?
going, I am magic, I am magic, I am magic.
But you're literally
I'm literally that.
doing
I say
that.
it every day.
You have your boundary on, though, right?
Yes.
Like that's doing it.
I
You're
say it every
taking the
day.
noise away.
And I feel like if you think that I'm crazy for thinking I'm magic, then you're not supposed to be in my world.
That's okay.
And that's perfectly fine with me, because anything that I'm putting out there is just for people who want to just believe that we can create our best life.
100%
That's really all
agree.
we want. And we have to be willing. We have to be willing to find and use the tools. We have to be willing to buy the books. And tell us a little bit about your workbook, because I've done the workbook and I love the workbook.
Did you do it?
Yes,
You did it?
I love
Okay,
the
that's
workbook.
great to hear. So let me go back to the book. The book has the whole third part is the steps that I took to get well. And feedback very quickly I got is, I need more for that. I need to understand that more. And it wasn't written as a self-help book. It was written more as like a memoir.
Yep.
So I didn't want it to feel very self-helpy, but people came and expressed to me, I want a little bit more. I want that in detail. So the workbook went into detail of those steps that I took, and then gave the person who's reading it the ability to write their steps out too, because at no time in the book or the workbook do I say, I know the way.
Right.
You know, I know my way, and I'm going to give you help with what I know and my point of reference, but I'm going to give you space to find your way.
Yes.
And that's what I did in the and I think it's successful. I think it works for people.
It does work. It works for me. I loved that. I love that it didn't feel workbookish.
Right.
Like, oh, I have to do this a certain way, and let me go back and read that again so I can understand. It was just like, no, just, it felt like I could be more creative and reflect a little bit more about what I was comfortable with, and putting down and kind of looking back on and going, oh, okay, this is great.
You saw where it came from. And I also, as you know me well enough, I had to have humor in there, because that was, again, that's a tool in my toolbox. When you laugh, you know, anxiety and laughter cannot occupy the same space.
Yes.
So if you're laughing, you're not anxious, and that's good.
And I know it sounds odd, but I laughed a lot through your book, about your book on anxiety. I laughed a lot. And I mean laugh out loud. That's not easy for me. I have a great sense of humor, but it's a lot to get me to belly laugh or just look at something and start to giggle.
I think we have a lot of the same sense of humor, though, right? Like we picture it. Like you could picture me with like the wax, right?
Absolutely,
like everywhere.
Absolutely. And it was like, oh my God. Yeah. And sometimes it's just about seeing yourself in someone else's writing.
Right.
And going, oh my God, this is so me. This is the book for me. This is the advice for me. This is everything for me. And I honestly and truly feel like that book and that workbook is for everybody. Anybody and everybody who has anxiety. I just love it. I just love you.
I love you.
I do. I have so much fun. Like, I don't even want this to end. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This was a great conversation. I knew it was going to be. And I know that a lot of what you said is going to help people.
Thank you. And I love coming and talking to you and laughing with you, because that's what it's all about too, right?
Yes.
Like sharing and laughing and smiling.
It really is. When we open up to each other and we look at each other and go, wow, we really aren't that different. It does. It opens up a whole new world.
Thank you.
It's a really wonderful thing. So thank you again.
Thank you.
To my friend Lucie. And that's it for tonight, everybody. So thank you for joining me for Tent Chat. And I'll see you next week. So take care. Good night.